A lot of people say, oh, I want money. I want a lot of money, but I hate rich people. Those are two incongruent thoughts. Right. So you wonder why you don't have money, because subconsciously you hate rich people. So basically what you're saying is, if I got more money, I'll become rich and I would hate myself.
Welcome back to the podcast. I started this podcast as a way to help Black men in all aspects of our lives. Studies show on average we lose 2.8 years of our life when we're under heavy stress. And I think we can gain those 2.8 years back if we express ourselves healthily. Stick with me as I interview therapists, doctors, advocates, activists, and friends about how we can be better as Black men and as a Black community. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube and following us on Instagram and TikTok, you'll definitely want to do that. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. Yo, what's up, y'all? I'm here with Jullien Gordon, Mr. Multifamily. We already got into the conversation. So we've been talking about how you got accustomed or how you got used to dealing with mental health in your family. And you talked about specifically not having to deal with depression growing up, but your mom dealing with depression. So can you talk a little bit more about what that was like for you growing up and how that got you into mental health a little bit?
Yeah. So, depression can come around us in multiple ways. It doesn't always have to come through us. And I do believe that it is infectious if it becomes a learned behavior. My mom is an amazing woman. I just want to acknowledge that first and foremost. I'm so grateful for her on her journey professionally. She ended up dealing with some mental health issues and had actually affected her license to practice anesthesia. And then once she lost her license, then the dark space of life, that cloud became thicker and thicker and thicker, and it ultimately led to alcoholism. And that sent her on a journey that she's still navigating today. So watching that from a distance, I did not know how to hold space for my mother. I went to a program called Al-Anon, which is a program for relatives of alcoholics. You just try to learn, how do you help somebody? Because what I learned from Al-Anon is that this whole concept of enabling, and how by you helping in some instances, you might actually be enabling them and actually prolonging the depressive state. And I mean, there's many approaches to depression, from letting that person go through what they have to go through until they hit a wall and something wakes them up, or really being that loving, and you can do that in love by keeping your distance, or you're the person that's trying to save them. And what I realized when it comes to like alcoholism and some deeper forms of depression, you can't save that person, but you can still hold them in love, even without actually tactically doing something that's helping them in the moment. And so, it's my mom. I love her. I came through her, and I've been able to coach people to success in various realms of life. And this was just not something that I was licensed or equipped to do. And I had to release that. Otherwise, it's almost like that drowning situation where if somebody's drowning and you try to go save them, you're going to end up drowning too, if you don't know what you're doing. And so I had to come to a point of acceptance and release. I was physically distant from her at that time. She was in California. I was in New York. So that helped me, because I wasn't in it day to day. I know there are some people who are living in situations like that where they actually live in the same house as the person. And I can't imagine how difficult that is, but that has been my journey. But in order to keep myself afloat, I do have a therapist about monthly, and maybe I'll double down when I'm going through some aspect of life. I've never been in what I've identified as a depressive state before, but I think it's therapy, meditation, and prayer that keep me above water, and just trusting that all things are working together for my good, and that the things that are happening are not happening against me, but that life is actually happening for me to grow and to develop. So I think those mindsets have helped me, but I'm sure there's people who have entered into depression who had those same exact mindsets, and then something caught them off guard and threw them into a tailspin. So that's been my journey. It's been a distant one in terms of it not being inside of me, but close in that it's one of the people that I love most dearly on this earth.
Right. Yeah. And I love the fact that you talked about having to kind of let go of trying to change and fix, right? Because oftentimes we can kind of become infatuated with that. And I wanted to ask you, because I know I've had to deal with that with certain family members, trying to like fix and change and guide. and understanding that at some point in time, you have to allow them to live their life the way that they want to live it, even if it's something that makes you uncomfortable. Do you feel like that's part of the reason why you want to coach people and why you want to train and help people? Do you feel like that's part of it?
So in terms of my work now as a real estate educator, investor, and developer, I know one of the things that causes the greatest amount of stress, and prolonged stress can lead to depression, right? So one of the things that creates the most amount of prolonged stress is people's cost of living. And your housing expense is going to be the biggest expense for you throughout your entire life, greater than taxes. Typically takes up about 35% of people's income. And so through the multifamily movement, I'm seeking to help people get rid of their biggest housing expense by buying a multifamily home that they then live in a unit for free, while the rents from the other units actually cover the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, capex, repair, reserve, vacancy rate. And I know that for me on my journey to walking in my purpose, making that one single move was so powerful for me, especially given that I was living in Brooklyn, where there's a lot of people who are struggling with rent on a monthly basis, right? Their rent burden is so high that it causes stress that can put somebody in a state of depression. And so getting rid of that housing expense, I haven't paid a housing expense since May of 2013, since I bought my triplex in Brooklyn, New York. And the freedom and the relief, that's not full freedom. Getting to rent and mortgage freedom is not full freedom, but the freedom of not having to worry about your housing expense for the rest of your life definitely decreases the likelihood and the chances of you going into a depressive state due to that burden being taken off of you. Life costs, and there's just a certain amount of money and a certain hurdle that you have to hit every single month just to live the basics of life, especially with inflation and wages not increasing according to inflation. So to help people relieve that financial burden, as well as get on the pathway to create what I like to call regenerational wealth, I think is a powerful thing. Also, with the multifamily movement, and I say regeneration wealth, you start to realize that you're doing something for a cause that is bigger and greater than you. Oftentimes, I think depression can be caused by constantly looking at self too much, right? What's wrong with me, and why is this not working for me? Why is this happening to me? It can be very self-centered. I do believe that some people get depressed by looking at the state of the world, but I think for most part, a lot of depression comes from just looking at me in my life. And when you've actually committed to creating regenerational wealth and passing on assets to the next generation, it's not about you, and you start to find that you have a deeper sense of purpose in everything that you do. And I do believe, I want to be very clear that I do believe that introspection is one of the keys to success in life. You have to have a balance of introspection as well as care and concern for something larger and greater than just yourself.
Right. And that's why, I'm glad that you said that, because when I talk about depression, because I experienced it in suicidal ideations, I talk about my faith being one of the biggest components that got me through. Right. And what you just pointed out was having something outside of you that gives you that level of purpose and also kind of relief. And for me, that was my faith. Right. It was understanding that at the end of the day, God is in control. Everything's going to happen in divine timing. And all I can do is sit here and be a part of the ride and make sure that I'm doing my work to make sure that I can achieve what it is that God has called me to do. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. And you talked a little bit about meditation earlier. So you talked about therapy, meditation, and faith. Can you take me through what your meditation looks like? Because I know for me, I tell guys all the time, I do belly breathing for 5 minutes, right? And that's basically my meditation, right? So what does your meditation look like?
Mine is very simple. There's no rules. When you really think about us as human beings, the one thing that we cannot stop, with the exception of, like you said, suicide, is our breath. Our breath is the one thing that we cannot stop. You can live without water, you can live without food for extended periods of time, but one thing you cannot live without is breath. And so, when you come into the awareness that you're being breathed through, you're not breathing, you're actually being breathed through. I think that it actually connects you to a higher power and actually the source of all life when you recognize that you're being breathed through. Just like a trumpet is being breathed through, you're being breathed through. Something, whatever you call it, is breathing through you. And that's a powerful thing. We plug in our cell phones all the time to make sure that they're charged, right? But we rarely take intentional time to plug into that thing, whatever that thing is, according to you. And that's what meditation allows me to do. My meditation is simple. I wake up, I sit up perpendicular in my bed, and I just try to let my thoughts settle. So, you know, those snow globes, right? Snow globes, when you shake them, right? When you shake them, you can't see through them clearly because all the fake snow is spread out, right? But if you just put the snow globe down for just 30 seconds, what happens is all that substance falls. And now you can see the scene that is there clearly. And the same thing happens for us as we are out here in the world. We're moving and shaking, trying to make things happen. And we get so caught up in busyness and moving and shaking that we don't take time to just be still and just let our mind get clear. Meditation is like taking a mental bath, right? You're literally just cleaning your mind. And it may seem simple when you first hear about it. It may sound dumb. I got a long old to-do list. What do you mean I need to sit still and do nothing? Right. The fact that you can't sit still and do nothing is probably why you need to sit still and do nothing. Right? It's counterintuitive as that sounds, right?
Right.
And it's just time to give your mind a break. Some people think that naturally happens through sleep, but if you understand that your mind, you know, the subconscious mind is working for you 24/7. The subconscious mind is what's causing you to breathe in the middle of the night when your conscious mind is asleep. The subconscious mind is beating your heart. Your subconscious mind is what tells you it's time to go to the bathroom at 3 a.m. or wakes you up and says, here's $1 million business idea because I know you've been trying to escape your job, right? Your subconscious mind is still working, right? And so meditation is where you are intentionally, without falling asleep, because when you're sleeping, your conscious mind is asleep. Meditation is you consciously saying, I'm actually going to take control over the reins of my mind and not let it control me. One of the things that I was taught when I was learning meditation was just to think about your mind just being this stream, right? And we call it thought streams and things of that nature, or even trains of thought. And these trains and these streams are coming in. There's leaves in those streams and twigs, and you can look at it, and what we tend to do, the monkey mind, it'll just grab at everything that is coming down the stream. But in meditation, in that practice to discipline your mind, you're literally, and that's what a disciple is, right? When you talk about faith, a disciple is somebody who's disciplined. It's the same root word. And so what we have to discipline is our mind. And when you are in meditation, instead of grabbing at every thought that is coming into your mind, you just look at that leaf and say, you just observe it and let it go down the river. You don't attach to it. You see a twig coming. That's interesting. You let the twig go down the river and you just don't attach to the thoughts. Well, what happens that leads us into depressive states and things of that nature is that we get attached to all of these thoughts, and all of these thoughts are not actually real until we actually put belief and energy into them. Even I would say that everybody has had ideations of suicide. The difference is there's some people who have grabbed onto that thought and held onto it, and others who thought about it for a second and just let it go down the river. And so this is how I've learned meditation, and it's really just get my mind to stillness. Now, when I come out of when I go into meditation, there's a lot of things coming down the river. Then the river starts to go slower and slower and slower, and then the river is clear. And then I come out of meditation, I might go into my to-do list and it picks back up. But at least I took the time to discipline my conscious mind from not having control over me. And so I believe that the spirit controls the mind and the mind controls the body. And when we let the body control everything, when the body is governing everything, we experience physical illness. And then when we let the mind control everything, that's what we call mental illness. When the mind is in control, it's doing things that you did not intend to do, but it is now taking control. And so I agree with you that faith is a key part of me staying and preserving my sanity in this particular world, because I try to operate from my spiritual self. But, we're always at war between those three things. Like your spiritual self says, you need to be eating fruits and vegetables, but then that cheeseburger, your body is saying, I want this candy or this cheeseburger right now. You know what I'm saying? So it's a constant battle. But disciplining one's mind is really, really important. And the question is, who disciplines the mind? And who that thing is actually the true you. It's the true you. it's the thing that is in control, because you are not your body. You say, I have a body, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a body. But so what is it that's doing the possessing? You are not your body. And I have a mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who has the mind? What has the mind? That spiritual essence is who you truly are. And coming back into that awareness, I am that I am. That's it. I am that I am. I'm not this body. I'm not this thought. I'm not this idea. I'm not this label, right? And especially in American society, we just love labels. I'm man. I'm woman. I'm black. I'm white. I'm Christian. I'm Muslim. We just love labels. But the label, the highest label of all, and all those identities may be true, but the highest label of all for me is actually what I'm wearing. Is child of God. That's the one thing that is true for all of us, and it's the label that transcends all and puts your identity in direct connection with, for me, what I call the Most High or the Creator. So staying plugged in that way and remembering who I am is what keeps me on by staying in touch with the Most High is what keeps me on an emotional high, you know?
Yeah. Nah, man, you're breaking it down perfectly, man. You're dropping a lot of gems. And you were talking about your faith. And I was looking at your content and I saw you put up a post just now. And I think it's so interesting, man. So I think we should dive into it a little bit. You talked about, 1, God is not Christian. You said 2, the Bible is not a Christian book. You said 3, Jesus was not Christian. So please, can you break that down? Exactly what you mean there and what that means to you and what your faith also means. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, just starting from the preface is that, and I appreciate you for digging in and doing the research and asking these tough questions. You know, my identity above everything is child of God. That transcends every other label. And I believe that our identities create our experiences. So there's somebody who may say, I'm a Black Christian male, right? Where somebody else says, I'm a Christian male that's Black. Those two people, based on how they prioritize their identities, even though it's the same 3, they're going to actually have different experiences of life.
You're absolutely right.
They're going to have different experiences of life, because one person will put their faith over their culture. And another person will put their gender and their masculinity over their faith. And so your identity will actually shape your experience. And for me, the most pure and important identity is our relationship to our source, whatever you call that. And so I always start, before I'm a real estate investor, before I'm a real estate educator, before I'm a real estate developer, before I'm a Black person of African descent, before I am a male, I'm a child of God, period. And that actually unifies me with every other being that exists. That once we get into our other specific labels, that we start to create division, right? And so back to the post, you know, I think these are pretty factual. I'm very level-headed, and I'm willing to ask. I believe that you know, religion, as it is in its current form, has actually taken many astray from God. And right now we're in this situation where it's who got the biggest set. Oh, we Christians, we got the biggest set. We Muslims, we got the biggest set. And it's like we banging on each other. You know what I'm saying? And the most important thing that all religions were created for was not their rituals or their dogma. What was to facilitate the connection of the individual and the relationship to God. So I actually believe in relationship over religion, right? If that religion supports your relationship, then I'm all for it. If that religion is actually cutting off your relationship, then it's not good. It's just not good. And so in my eyes, and actually, I don't want to say not good. Everything has its purpose, and I'm not here to judge. But I believe that the purpose of religion should be to strengthen our relationship with our Creator. So the first point, God is not Christian. God existed before there was anything. God was at the beginning, when there was no religion, there was no division. So God, that energy, that source, that entity, whatever it is, it didn't have a religion, right? In fact, religion is only it only appears in the Bible like a few times, and that's starting in Acts. So you're telling me that nobody mentioned the word religion in the entire Old Testament and the Gospels, and it didn't get introduced until Paul said it in Acts. And now this is the thing that everybody has to abide by. That something around that doesn't resonate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the Bible is not a Christian book. Christianity didn't exist when the Bible was written, right?
Mm-hmm.
Christianity didn't come forth also until the book of Acts, right? Paul and Christianity in many ways is Paul's interpretation of Jesus' teaching. But remember, this was not a Paul that was a disciple of Jesus. This was a Paul that actually heard about it 70 to 90 years later,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever played the game of telephone, right? We can't even get a sentence across the room between 5 people. And you telling me that this person perfectly interpreted something that was passed on via oral tradition 70 years later? Come on, man. Come on. And now hopefully he did his best to get the most accurate interpretation, but I'm sure in many cases things were left out. And then we also know that the Roman Empire came in to influence and manipulate the book and the religion. And then on top of that, Jesus was not Christian. Jesus was a Jewish, right? And so if people say that, well, Christianity is following Christ, but honestly, if you've ever read the Gospels, just the Gospels, I would encourage you to read the entire book. It's a very powerful process to go through that yourself. There's one thing I think that we should never outsource, and that's our spirituality. I want you, if you don't know how to fix your car, then you should outsource that to a mechanic. If you do not know how to put on braces, then you need to outsource that to an orthodontist, right? But the one thing that we should never outsource is our spirituality. And that's what we've done by going to church and sitting passively, letting somebody else go into these texts and translate it and then bring it to us. You may have needed that back in the past when people could not read, but then the printing press came and then the Bible was able to be published. And then as literacy rates went up, that actually positions everybody to be able to read for themselves. So you don't need a middleman or middle woman to translate it for you. You can go directly to the source, so you're not getting secondhand information. When I finally read that book for myself, I saw things in there that will never, ever be preached on a Sunday. In fact, what I really saw is I saw that this narrative of Jesus was actually the opposite of what was unfolding in today's churches. And I realized that Jesus, based on the Gospels, was actually against religion. Yet here we have quote unquote followers of Jesus saying that this religion is the way. It's just an oxymoron. And honestly, for those who believe that Christ is coming back, if Christ were to come back today, I honestly don't believe that it'd be like, this is what you created off of what I said. I don't think it would be in alignment. And so, everybody who says my name, what's the scripture? Everybody who says my name will not, I forgot the full scripture, but that, everybody who says they represent my set, basically,
right,
ain't really from my set. That's basically what it says. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, connecting this back to depression, a lot of depression comes from people's God concept. I think depression really kicks in when you've lost faith in a God and a good God. You believe that the world is going to hell. You believe that your life is going to hell. You believe that there's no hope. When you've lost faith and connection with your creator, I think that creates more vulnerability for things like depression to set in. And on top of that, I think depression also sets in when we try to control. But when you have true faith in a source that is greater than you, then you realize that you don't really control much. I don't really control that much. I control some of my daily decisions. I don't control my thoughts. I actually am getting a better control of my thoughts, but there's so many thoughts that run through my mind every single day that I'm like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? But then when I get to choose which ones I grab onto. So I have choice there. But when you are trying to control your life in order to make it perfect or make it happen in some sort of way, and then you go through that futile attempt and you realize, I can't control my life. You feel very susceptible, and you can feel very susceptible and vulnerable in that time and space and feel like I give up. That can be an I give up moment when you come to the awareness that I can't control my life and that I actually have to live this thing by faith. But what's odd is that we live by faith every single day, but then we claim we don't have faith. And what I mean by that is like, there's people who will get into an Uber and they'll get in the back seat.
Talk about it.
And they will not even put on a seatbelt.
Yep.
You notice when people get into taxis, they don't put on seatbelts?
Not me, but I know people do that. Yeah, but not me. I don't trust people that much.
They have so much faith in somebody that they don't know driving a vehicle at 60 miles per hour somewhere. But when they get in the car, they'll put it on. But when they're in somebody else's car on a taxi, they won't put on a seatbelt. So to say that we don't have faith is not true. We have faith every single day. Even just to drive alone, you have faith. You have faith that all these hundreds of cars that you're about to pass, that they took their driving test and that they're being attentive, and you're trusting that they're going to stay in their lane, etc. We have faith every single day. But when we get into these dark spaces, we say, I can't trust anybody. I can't trust anything. I don't even trust life in general. And that definitely can send you in a downward spiral.
Absolutely, man. You're speaking facts, man. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. You do a lot of real estate teaching. I know you talked a little bit about in 2013, you got your first multi-family unit. Can you please tell me what inspired that in 2013? Because I don't feel like anybody was really talking about that in 2013. I feel like we're now starting to get into like the financial literacy lane in the Black community.
Yeah, man.
So please tell me.
Yeah, happy to share the story. So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in college, and I knew straight out the gates that I wasn't buying a single family home after reading that book. I also witnessed my mother, after going through her depressive state, lose the house that I grew up in. And that was a single family home in Oakland, California. So Rich Dad Poor Dad confirmed what I was actually experiencing, where my mother had great income, right, as a doctor, anesthesiologist. But then one thing in life happened and it derailed everything. Now, if my mother would have had a multifamily home and something happened to her and her income, guess what? She would still have the home today.
Right, because she had somebody else in there.
Yeah, well, and the rent while she was getting back on her feet, the rents from the other 2 or 3 units would have covered everything, right? So when you have a single family home, what people don't know is that they think they're buying a $300,000 single family home, but they haven't added in all the interest. That home is actually a $508,000 home when you add in all the interest that you're going to pay over 30 years. And so on top of that, most single family buyers do not actually own their home. When they buy it, they are not homeowners, they're home buyers. And that's a huge difference. They own 3.5% because that's all they put down in terms of the down payment. The bank actually owns their home. So they think that, oh, look at me, I'm grown and sexy, I'm not paying rent anymore. They're not paying rent to a landlord, but they're paying rent to the bank to use the bank's money. When you pay rent to the bank charges you interest. So you're still paying rent. It's just not to a landlord, it's to the bank to use money that you didn't have to buy the house that you now live in. And then when you add in the property taxes, the insurance, PMI, right, and maintenance, some single family buyers have more money going out of their pocket every single month due to housing than somebody who's renting the same square footage across the street. And so just looking at the actual math, it's just basic math. You see that this is not an asset, and that a single family home can actually be a real liability for somebody if they're not careful or they bought at the top of their budget. So knowing that, I knew that my first property would be a multifamily home, and I was living in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn primarily has multifamilies. That's just the nature of the architecture there. And I was renting a 2-bedroom apartment on Fulton Street in Brooklyn. I was headed to the post office one day and I saw balloons for an open house. So I went around the corner and I saw that the open house literally shared a backyard with the property I was renting. It was right behind.
Oh, wow.
And so once I saw that opportunity, I got my paperwork in that day because I knew that this was a gold mine. And I was on Fulton and Utica, and I saw the wave coming from Manhattan to Dumbo. You know, Jay-Z in 444 talks about, I should have bought that a property in Dumbo, right? Yeah. Then Fort Greene, then Stuyvesant, Clinton Hill, then Stuyvesant Heights, then it was coming to Bed-Stuy. But at that time, Bed-Stuy was called Do or Die Bed-Stuy.
Yeah, it still wasn't.
It wasn't called Do or Die. Well, who wants to buy in a neighborhood called Do or Die? But when you understand the patterns of what they call gentrification, which is actually colonization, which you'll see the patterns. I saw the same pattern in Oakland. I saw the same pattern in Inglewood, California. I saw the same pattern in Brooklyn, right? And so it's just pattern recognition. I saw that when you buy on the edge and you buy where people are coming, then you're going to benefit from huge amounts of appreciation and great rents. And so I did that. Now, this property was not my dream home. Many people think that they need to buy their dream home right out the gates. No, this property was not my dream home. But guess what? It made my dreams possible. That's the difference. And so you have to decide whether you're going to buy based on emotions or you buying based on economics. Are you looking for your dream home? Or are you looking for an asset that will pay for your dream home? Are you looking for a finished basement? Or are you looking to start building wealth? And since housing is our greatest expense, I wanted to get rid of my greatest expense so that not just for me to just cake up and be kicking my feet up on a beach. I was trying to mitigate my biggest expense so that I could have more breathing room to walk in my God-given purpose. Because what stops people from walking in their God-given purpose is not knowing how to finance the other aspects of their life. And so by getting rid of my housing expense, that created more runway and breathing room for me to figure out what was my lane, what was my unique contribution to this earth. And as you can see, I'm walking in it today. And a big part of that is because I bought a multifamily home and got rid of my biggest housing expense. And I went from paying expensive rent in Brooklyn to now being paid expensive rent in Brooklyn, just like that with one single move.
I love that, man. I love that so much. You broke that down beautifully, bro. So I want to ask you a couple more questions. What do you feel like your God-given purpose is? I think it's very clear, but just make it clear to the people a little bit.
Yeah, so it's twofold. And I originally, actually, it's always been twofold. And it has been to unify the spiritual and the financial. And I was able to do that in a book that was born through me. Literally, I can't believe that I wrote this book. This book was birthed through me, literally. Like it had me waking up at 3 a.m. I just put my keys on the hand on the keyboard, and the book just came out. Right. I read it today, and I'm like, I wrote this. You know what I'm saying? And so that's Rich and Righteous, the keys of mastering manifestation, money in your mind, and so I'm here to unify the spiritual and the financial because those two things have been kept apart. You have people who are very spiritual but struggling financially. You have people who are doing well financially but lacking in spirit. And I want you to be rich in both aspects of your life. Well, I'm come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. And I believe that children of God, their biggest challenge is actually receiving. Children of God, we're great at giving, right? Giving to the church, giving to other people, time, money, everything, right? But the skill set that we need to develop, which is actually a muscle, is actually the ability to receive. And children of God, we don't just receive for the sake of receiving. We receive so that we can give more. Because if you constantly give and you never receive, then eventually your cup is going to be empty. So we have to actually become better receivers in order to be greater givers. And so I want to help people get over a lot of them are religious hangups around money, thinking that money is the root of all evil. No, that's not what it says. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. We should never serve money. We should never make money our God, right? Money is actually here to serve us. And so not only is the love of money the root of all evil, but also the lack of money. The lack of money has probably caused more damage to this world than the love of money, right? And so this is why I call it rich and righteous. It sounds like, how can I be rich and righteous at the same time? But we actually need more and more rich and righteous people, more people who are spiritually rich, right? So that they can do more good. So I use money, which is really just stored energy. Money is an inert spiritual substance, and we get to use it to do more good or more of God's work on this earth. And so when I know your heart is pure and that you are here for righteous causes beyond just yourself, then how the creator perceives that is that I don't personally believe that any of the money in my bank account is mine. It's all God's money. And the reason God continues to pour into me is because God knows that the buck does not stop here. God knows that the buck does not stop here. Most people, if they receive money, all they're going to do is they're going to put it in a bank account for their own security. Oh, I got more money. I'm safer now, right? In God we trust, right? But what most people don't realize is that keeping money in a bank account is actually a sign of your financial insecurity, no matter how much is there. Because money is meant to be circulated. This is why it's called currency. It's supposed to have a current. It's supposed to move. And so if you were just hoarding money, just like the parable of the talents, right? In the parable of the talents, one servant was given 4 talents, the other one was given 2, and one was given 1. The one with 4 doubled it. The one with 2 doubled theirs, and the one with 1 out of a scarcity mindset, buried theirs in the dirt. And that's what many people are doing with the savings account, is they're burying their talents or their money in the dirt. It says that you should not give your pearls to swine, right? Well, where do they tell you to put your money when you're a little kid? In a piggy bank. They tell you to put it in a piggy bank, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what a piggy bank is? A swine. And then you're giving your pearls, which is your money, to swine. So there's so many financial principles in the Bible. I was able to download those, divinely download those through the Rich and Righteous book. And so for me, my work is mental real estate and it is physical real estate. Physical real estate is just a manifestation of us owning our mental real estate first. And so it's twofold. It's inner and outward. And for a long time, we've just been on one side of the pendulum over here, focus on my inner, or one side of the pendulum over here, focus on the outward material world. And I think it's time that we actually bring those in harmony and find balance, right? Money is not the root of all evil. Money can be and should be used for good. And I want anybody who would do more good with more money to have more money.
Right.
So if you would do more good with more money, then I want you to have more money, period. Mm-hmm. Right. And so helping people recalibrate their relationship to money, not seeing it as this negative thing. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I want money. I want a lot of money, but I hate rich people. Those are two incongruent thoughts. Right. So you wonder why you don't have money, because subconsciously you hate rich people. So basically what you're saying is, if I got more money, I'll become rich and I would hate myself. So right. You have to reconcile that within yourself, because a house divided against itself cannot stand. So what is the house? The house is your mind. And so when the house is divided, you're saying you want this, but subconsciously you say, I hate rich people. All rich people are bad. I hate the 1%. Well, what if you ever enter the 1%? You and your good heart, if you enter the 1%, all of a sudden you're evil too now, just because you crossed a certain economic barrier? No, we need more people with pure hearts and who considers themselves to be children of God as part of the 1%, so that we can start to use this stored energy, right, which is money, and use it to literally bring heaven on earth,
right,
and accelerate that process.
Man, that is so beautiful, man. I love the way that you think about money and tying spirituality with our finances, man. I don't think I've ever heard anybody break it down that way, but I'm a lot of enlightenment, bro. So thank you so much for the way that you're breaking it down, for real. Because it's definitely changing my mindset in the way that I think about money, man. And I for the last question, I just want to ask you, man, for anybody listening, how could they get started in multifamily real estate, or like learning more about it, or buying their first unit?
Yeah. So the easiest way is periodically I do a webinar called the Multifamily Master Plan, and you can go to rentfree.com, rentfree.com, 8 letters. And literally that's the goal, is to show you how to buy your first property to get you to rent and mortgage freedom. So it's rentfree.com. And you'll find out when my next webinar is, and I'll teach you how to finance, find, and finalize multifamily real estate deals. Your first property, if you buy it right, should get you to rent and mortgage freedom, meaning that you never have a housing expense for the rest of your life. And if we can take your rent, let's say your rent is $1,000 a month, and we can actually keep that in your pocket and invest it at 6% annually, over 30 years, you would have $1,015,590. So you would literally be a millionaire if we could just get rid of this one thing, which is your housing expense. And so that is what I teach people. I've helped over 300 people close on their first multifamily home. Collectively, we bought over $100 million worth of real estate in the multifamily movement. And at this moment in time, I know I'm in my purpose, because at this moment in time, I don't know of anybody else on the face of this earth that has helped more people close on their first multifamily home than myself.
Right.
So I know that this is my walk and this is my calling. And on top of that, the multifamily movement, though, is not just about multifamily real estate. The multifamily movement is multiple families working together to create regenerational wealth. And multifamily real estate just happens to be the first asset that we're acquiring together. But we are going to be on this mental and material journey together to do as much good in the world as possible. But of course, making sure that we have the proper financial foundation and the proper mental mindset in order to do that. And so I'm so grateful. And I just came to that awareness this past year. I thought it was just going to be about real estate, but I realized that this goes beyond real estate. When you think about God's first gift to man before life, it was actually land. The land was here before we got here. And so this land that we live on is sacred, and we have to become better stewards of it. From a historic standpoint, our people who were given the land in the first place, including the United States. But they won't tell you that part. From a historic standpoint, we didn't believe in private property. We're like, this land was here before I got here, so how can I own it? The idea of ownership was foreign to us. I can't own this. This was here before I got here. If something was there before you got there, how are you just going to say that you own it? Right. Mm-hmm. But we entered a paradigm where private property and ownership became a thing, and it came from Europe. And so now we're still in that paradigm. And so we actually have to buy back land that was actually freely given to humanity. We have to actually buy it back piece by piece, parcel by parcel, so that we can be good stewards of not only the land, but also the buildings and how they're used on top of that land. And most importantly, the people. Like, I take care of my tenants. There's a negative stereotype about landlords, but no, not all landlords are slumlords. I'm a steward of my tenants. I take care. I house about 65 to 70 people, and I care for them, because they are not in a position to buy a house on their own at this moment in time. And so do I want them to buy homes? Yeah, I don't want them to be my tenants forever if they are in position to actually go acquire their first multifamily. But until then, I am responsible for taking care of them and the properties that they live in and the land that those properties are on. And so I just see that this journey as stewardship. I can't take any of this with me when I die. Right. But I can be the best steward possible of it while I'm here. And, going back to scripture, we all have to give an accounting. We all have to give an accounting of what we were given. And I'm just going to seek to have a great accounting of how I use what I was given while I was here.
Man, listen, bro, thank you, because you are dropping a lot of gems, bro. This has been really, like I said, really enlightening. Please tell the people where they can find you, how they can support, how they can follow you, how they can get the book, all that good stuff.
Yes,
man.
sir. Yes, sir. So the webinar is at rentfree.com. I'm primarily on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Jullien Gordon, Gordon. So that's 2 L's and an IEN, not an AN. Jullien Gordon. That's on Instagram. And for those who are interested in the book, Rich and Righteous, The Spiritual Secrets to Mastering Money, Manifestation, and Your Mind, you can get that at moneyandmanifestation.com. That's moneyandmanifestation.com.
Jullien, thank you so much for your time, bro. I appreciate all the gems that you dropped. You definitely changed my mindset about a lot today, man. The episode was dope.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you for inviting me to your platform.
Absolutely. Yo, I'm excited, man. We're currently building the exclusive community, and it's going to have so many dope features. We're partnering with a Black organization to offer low-cost therapy to each member of the exclusive community. And when I say low cost, I mean that members will be able to get therapy sessions for less than $50, regardless of who they are and where they are. We're also going to have free ebooks and courses, including both the Hurting to Healing ebook and the therapy ebook I'm currently writing, live podcast episodes where you'll be able to interact with the guest and I in real time, community forums, exclusive merch, and categorized content so you can easily find information that may be useful to you. So go to expressyourselfblackman.com/therapy and register for early access. It's literally a 30-second process. I just need your name, email, and social media handle to make sure you get access before anyone else. And before I dip, I just want to thank you for your support. Without people like you, none of this would be possible. I can't wait to see you when we launch.
Sometimes I know you feel like you ain't got nobody to speak to. A shoulder to lean on somebody you could preach to. No, you need to hear it, my brother, I love you. We got way too much to live for.